Alrighty, so that was Blink 182 with San Diego. I had to admit recently, I've always been like one of those people like, Blink, because I guess it's the old like punk rock in me, but I always got I guess kind of butthurt because I listened to pop punk way back. Like, I'm older, so I graduated high school in 2004, and that was right when they were coming up. But I loved MXPX, Slipshoot, like all the Tooth and Nail bands. I loved No Effects, and it was just like, Blink is not the granddaddies of pop punk that everybody thinks they are, and that's okay. Like, they are the ones that brought it into the light, and I appreciate that. And I'm a closet Blink fan.
Well, I've had,
and that's a me thing. Like,
no, dude, I've had that conversation so many times with people where it's a generational gap. It really is, because it's like you were either like on the MXPX front, where like you were like, oh, this is what I'm into. This is what's getting me into punk rock, quote unquote. Or then you have that next step was Blink, and then after that next step, you had like Simple Plan and Good Charlotte. And I was like almost neglected to want to get into Good Charlotte and Simple Plan at first, because it was like, that's not punk rock. It's not. And then I realized that like the next generational gap, then you had like, the Newfound Glory, the Starting Line, and I got really into that. And I was like, I should stop being stubborn, and I'm going to go back and like all of this for what it is.
Right.
It's just a different time.
Well, music evolves, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Go back and look at like chamber music in
You
the
don't have
1700s. We don't do that anymore.
You don't have to understand it, but you always get those like, older punk rock dudes that are like, that's not punk rock. You said this is punk rock, and I'm well, we were just talking about it before. Punk rock is anything you want it to be.
Right.
It's punk rock for me to tell you that it's punk rock. It's whatever. I could be like, yo, the new Miley Cyrus record is punk rock, and it'll offend people, and because it does, that makes it punk rock. Right.
That's fair. No, that's a totally fair point. And that's a great way to go into. I wanted to talk about Novella and the way back. So it's a great thing. Music does evolve, and the way people experience music and stuff. There was a band that split up. I can't remember who it was. A couple weeks ago, and I was talking with somebody. She was like 20 or so, and she's just like so bummed out about it. I'm like, you know what? I've been doing this on and off for a long time. Local bands are gonna come and go. Keep the music. Enjoy it, love it. I always play a throwback track on my other show, on my music format show, and there's the nostalgia of it. But things change. Venues close. Bands evolve. They start other bands. They have kids, family, mortgage. They have to stop doing it, whatever. But that's what it is. That's what music is.
Right. Well, that's what separates the lifers. I call them lifers because we've seen like the faces, of these bands, and then the guys that are still doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I remember there was a band called Lowercase. My buddy Ian plays bass and still does to this day, and he plays in all different kinds of country bands. He tours the country. Obviously you have the Behind the Blindfold. You have Pat, who's still doing the Monster Eats Manhattan stuff, and you see Bon, who's been doing
Bon's been doing it forever,
and jumping from band to band, and just and
Matt Amelung,
he's
still doing it.
They're lifers. Everybody's got like, it separates your love and the hobby part of you,
right?
And you can't always do it to the extent that you want to, but you also can't recapture, like you said.
Right.
Venues are going to close, bands are going to evolve, and you can either evolve with them or you can stay back and remember it. And I like to do a little bit of both.
You did something. Actually, this is where I first met you a couple years back. Actually, I really want you to do it again. But the STL Punk throwback shows.
Yeah.
Like, that was so cool. Actually, I had not had my driver's license ever in my life. And I rushed it, took my lessons, and bought my car to be able to drive to that show.
That's so awesome.
Like, because it was like, that was my youth. Like, I started working at the Creepy Crawl when I was 19, my senior year of high school, completely by accident. It just, it happened. Kind of one of those it's meant to be happy accident things, I think. And all of those bands were bands that like they were coming up, or I watched grow. You had Nothing Still, you had Rushmore Academy, you had Centerpoint, you had Westcott, you had Ava Waite. Who else did you have? It was like a 2-day thing. Sophomore.
Man. Yeah, Sophomore.
Shall We Dance?
Yeah, it was overwhelming. It's still overwhelming just talking about it. It was so much fun. I wanted to do it. I do want to do it again. absolutely. I know that a lot. Oh, Ava Waite played too. Ava Waite played too.
Yep.
And Last Night's Vice, I believe, played. It was just, I think a lot of it, unfortunately, like I do want to do it again, and I'm hoping that maybe in a couple of years it'll spark it back up.
Right.
Unfortunately, it was unfortunately for us, but fortunate for these people, it was closure for a lot of these people.
Right.
Like they didn't get that final show that they really, really wanted, or when they did the final show, it was just kind of like burnt out.
Right.
Like I know when Novella played our last show, there was like 70 people there, which is hilarious because like, well, sad and hilarious because we used to like play shows that would sell out Mississippi Nights.
Oh yeah,
so
no.
it was like,
place.
yeah, it was like we were going from selling out 1,000 cap room, you know, with 4 other local bands to like not being able to put anybody in a room. So I know a lot of those guys and a lot of those bands were really excited to like play a final show and to kind of bury the hatchet.
Flew back into St. Louis to do that. You know, your friend, our friend, I know him from way back, Steve Nesky, and
Steve.
Pat Lawrence. They're both living in LA, and they both flew to St. Louis to play the show. Which
and for me,
amazing.
like I'm a huge Rushmore Academy fan. Like they growing up, Novella used to tour with them all the time, even though it didn't make any sense because we were.
It didn't matter then.
It didn't matter at all, and I'm a huge. Those guys are all my best friends. Like I've been in their weddings. Like we've been through the hardest times. We've been the best times. And when Rushmore split, and then again when they did Option Control and that also split, it was like a little mini like heartbreak for me because like. You know, you have a lot of when you have talented friends and you want to see them succeed.
Of course.
And I still say to this day, I don't understand why Rushmore never got a record contract. I don't see it. And that's not the end all be all.
Right.
But like you said, there are those limitations where you reach that point and you're like, wow, I do need to start a family. I have to provide for that family, like playing these local shows at Creepy Crawl and Fubar and, you know, nothing against that, but it's like playing those shows wasn't putting food on the table. Of course not. And so, unfortunately, you have to grow up.
Right.
And a lot of people either grow up and they disappear, or they grow up and they stick around and kind of hang out on the sidelines, and they start new bands. And yeah, Steve is one of my best friends, and he's crazy talented, like crazy.
Oh no, yeah.
He's actually been helping me with like the new Tear Out the Heart pre-production of the new record. Yeah,
awesome.
he's helped a lot with like vocal production and helping me get my chops up to where I want to be because, you know, I've been yelling.
Yeah, you're a screamer more than you do cleans.
And we want to blur the lines of that. We don't want it to be, oh, this guy does this guy does another thing. We want it to sound like a unified voice or voices. Right. And so I have been singing a lot more and trying to get comfortable with that and projecting myself and pushing myself as a vocalist and a lyricist. And Steve has been a very awesome friend in helping me find my voice.
Right. I still have their old tracks like Problematic and stuff that, I mean, the quality is
well, isn't that technically
that was a demo. I don't think they ever released it.
It was what was their old band? Supervillain Zero.
That was before my time.
See, but I think Problematic was like the first like it might have been the very first Rushmore, but it came from Supervillain Zero. Because some of those dudes I know Matt and Nesky were in Supervillain Zero, so they started Rushmore. They kind of did the same thing that Novella did with Tear Out the Heart, was like a revamp.
Just
where they're
kind of
like,
evolved.
We have to learn what we're doing and change and move forward.
Well, I mean, and that's kind of, again, you have to evolve. People get upset when, you know, styles change, you know, records come out and it's like, oh, this is not what it was. Okay, well, do you want people to play the same thing all the time? Think about how boring that would get. Yeah. Like if every record that somebody released sounded exactly the same. And that's great if you know, that's your thing, I guess, but
it's tricky. It really is, especially growing up in the Midwest because we're nostalgia. Like I'm very guilty of like loving nostalgia and finding those hole in the wall like restaurants and bars that you want to go to and that's it. And people don't want change, and you don't want to abruptly change so where you offend everybody, but you want to slowly evolve.
Right.
And you know, that's how it goes with everything, not just
so there's
music.
A strategy to it,
right? Like I always refer to, a lot of people get really offended about Fall Out Boy and where they are now in their careers, but I could argue that if you go back and you listen to it, they did a very good job of evolving into the band that they probably knew they wanted to be second record in,
right?
And you can't get all offended that they did what they did, because it's pure. It wasn't like an overnight thing. You can hear the evolution between each record.
And that's their art. That's, I had a conversation with someone earlier today, and they're like, oh, this blah, 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 this just genre sucks. And I'm like, I agree with you in a way that it's a dead genre. And we were talking about like the old, like Nickelback, Sick Puppies, like, I don't want to say butt rock, but like, the dad rock kind
of. Dad rock. I like how that's the new thing to where we don't have to be, because we all know St. Louis loves dad rock.
That is like, we have a market for that. We
are one of the only few markets where it is thriving.
Yeah.
Like, it is massive. So it sucks to like have a word like butt rock. So I'm glad that we have dad rock. Because I have many friends in dad rock bands.
I was talking to a kid that I had never talked to before, having a conversation, and we were talking about We Are United and stuff. And he's like, well, you guys don't do any metal shows. I was like, well, I'm trying to work on that actually. And, you do all the pop punk and you do all the dad rock. And it's like, okay, yeah. He's like, this sucks. I'm like, I appreciate that you don't enjoy that. And I don't always enjoy that style of music either. But that's still somebody's art that they're taking the time to practice, to write, to sell tickets, to hustle.
Yeah.
And play out. I mean, just like you do that with your genre and the work it takes, just because you don't appreciate somebody else's music or style doesn't mean that it doesn't take the same amount of work.
I think it just, for a lot of people, it's oversaturation. Like, they don't want to go to a show. I'm the same way. I don't want to go to a 5-band metal show. I don't want to go to a 5-band pop punk show. I don't want to go to a 5-band alternative rock show. Like, that's just not
right.
And I'd be lying to myself and everybody else if I say I go to these shows and I pay full attention to these bands. Mm-hmm. So that's why, like, I like when we have shows, we like to throw like a Minical Drive, and we've played with the Monster Eats Manhattan. And I think that when those guys play with us, the reaction is kind of like, when people are like, oh, cool, like, this is the one band of my day of the show that is
you've never
different,
heard,
that you've never heard.
Yeah.
And I really, back in the day, St. Louis used to have that way more often.
Right.
Like, metal, it would play with pop punk, and pop punk would play with, like, there were bands like Think Thunk. Do you remember? They were just like,
I don't remember them, but I remember like the electronic scene, like Ultra Blue and La Push.
Yeah, and that was it. That was the thing. We would all play together to sell out these rooms, and that's what I've been trying to do with my promotion and with this band since for a long time, for years. That's why we did. That was my number one goal when we did Floor Fest last year. It was like, I really want to capture you remember the Rittner Carnival, the music? Like, Rittner used to have a carnival where they would have like 10 to 15 bands, and they would do the same thing.
No, I don't remember that.
So
I remember
awesome.
Battle for Potosi, which was kind of the same idea.
Yeah, very similar idea, and those things don't exist anymore unless they seem gimmicky. Like, oh, come play the Battle of the Bands, like, like, sell 1 million tickets and get no money and just, all your time. But that's why we wanted to do, last year we did Floor Fest, and I hope to do it again. Like, I really do, because there was a lot of unity.
I wanted to come. I bought a ticket and I wasn't able to. I had too much other stuff going on that night. And that's, again, we're going to have to break, but that's something that I'm really stoked about. It's like, tonight there are 4 shows, 4 venues that I want to be at and see these bands. They're all great shows. They're all great. And again, it's divided. They're all different genres, but it's if I'm going to drive to 4 different venues in one night, again, tomorrow night is 2 different venues. It's just because these are all shows that I legitimately want to see. They're bands that bring the energy and they work hard, and I enjoy watching, even if I don't like their sound, because of the energy. And that's something I think that was missing from this city for a long, long time, was that
camaraderie.
Energy. Yeah,
camaraderie too. It's like, can you imagine if all those shows you just listed were under one roof? Like, that could sell out the pageant.
Oh yeah,
but like, it's just the thought process is like, it is segregated a little bit, but I think it is getting better.
There's
definitely
a lot of bands that are showing up to support other bands when they're not even playing, which is again, even a year ago, I didn't see that.
I can agree with that for sure.
So I'm stoked on it. Do you want to play another song?
Yeah. Let's. This next song I want to play for you is, I guess I'm playing songs from my favorite records of last year. This is a band called A Loss for Words, which is an underdog as well in the pop punk department. And my buddy Maddie is the vocalist, and they just broke up, so they released like a farewell record, which unfortunately is their best record. Because isn't that how that always works?
Yeah.
Great dudes, great band. They never got the attention that they deserved, and this is my favorite song off that record.
Alrighty.